Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light. Well, today is See You at the Pole, a day when students gather around their flagpole at school and pray. This is surprising. More than 64 countries participate. I didn't realize that.
64 different flags.
Yeah.
Well, this was the scene at Harrisburg Christian School this morning. See You at the Pole started in 1990 as a grassroots movement with 10 students in Burleson, Texas. Decades later, millions pray on their campuses on the fourth Wednesday in September for their fellow classmates, their teachers, and the nation.
Seeing at the Pole is all about the fearing God. It is putting Him the first and foremost and ultimate thing in our whole day, in our whole year, in our whole life. We stand here praying for teachers right now and the school of what God has done good and what we're asking Him to continue to do. This year already, we've seen the faithfulness through His students and through the teachers, and we just hope that continues. This is just a reminder to set our hearts on Him, not on our grades, not on our work, not on our curriculums, but on God, because that's who we do it for and what we do it for.
And this year's theme is awe, based on Habakkuk 3:2. Well, debates about American history aren't new, are they? But it's the way we debate, with civility and hopefully a listening ear, which makes all the difference. The Morning Light panel will take a step back from all of the controversy about history to help us find the way Christians should interpret history through the lens of God's ultimate plan, the bigger plan for America and for the world.
And here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. How can you lead as many people as possible into a relationship with Jesus Christ? A Pennsylvania nonprofit called The Tide has the answer. Plus, find out how grabbing a cup of joe can help this ministry.
That's a good way to do it. We like coffee anyway.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, in preparation of America's 250th anniversary, the debate on America's story continues. A few chapters have been left out of this argument, from restoring the names of military bases, renaming a prominent body of water, to restoring the name of a 20,000-foot mountain, to major adjustments to textbooks and museum exhibits. President Donald Trump has, of course, been delivering on campaign promises to make changes to the way we tell the story of America. Many consider it an overdue course correction. Others, of course, disagree.
Well, and some of these changes are in response to President Trump signing an executive order named Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. The administration feels there's been a widespread effort to rewrite our nation's history. The purpose of this executive order is to replace what it deems a distorted narrative. This includes federal memorials, statues, and monuments. And some of the displays have already been removed or restored.
And it's happening fast, and a lot of people are asking questions. It's a good time to step in and say there's not a Republican way to look at it, a Democratic way to look at it, but hopefully a gospel lens. How does the gospel and the spread of Christianity in America change the way we tell and interpret America's story? From the moments we consider noble and glorious, like the American Revolution and the Great Awakening, to some of those darker and more difficult chapters like slavery and the struggle for civil and human rights. What is the way to love our country and celebrate its ideals of freedom and liberty, but at the same time acknowledge the Christian's duty to challenge injustice and protect the vulnerable? We'll take this question to the Morning Light panel this morning. Dr. James LaGrand. Jim LaGrand is here this morning. Luke Covert, glad to have you back. And Pastor Joshua Robertson, good to have you. Dr. LaGrand, I'm going to start with you because you are, as I think, the only one with a PhD in history on our panel here. What is history? What role does government have to play in telling that story? Give us the wide shot of this discussion.
Well, history is the study of our past. It's the best we can do to understand the movements, the developments of our past. Obviously, this is a difficult thing to get exactly right, but the goal is to tell the truth about history. I would be one, this is my opinion, I think that the exercise of political power produces as many problems as it might sort of remedy things. So I would want to sort of divide those two parts of your question.
Okay, interesting. All right, so do the politicians, do people in the legislative branch, the executive branch, judicial branch, should they have some weigh in on what that is, or are they just part of the citizenry who are adding their voice, even though it's a bigger platform?
I tend to lean more to the civil libertarian side.
Okay.
I'm a sort of traditionalist, organic conservative.
Yeah.
I would prefer myself, I think this is in keeping with the best in the American tradition, I think this would be the best possible route, is if a number of, to evoke Edmund Burke, a number of little platoons set about this project to try to, as much as we're able to get the story of our collective national past more or less right.
That's very helpful. Pastor, so we have this debate often, and in the years when talk radio was growing, we talked a lot about those things. Certainly we've had debates about monuments below the Mason-Dixon line and above the Mason-Dixon line. And now there is a sense that people look at the story and say, well, I've never heard of that, or nobody told me that, or what about these people? Now, how do you see what has been left in or what should be left out, or how America's story is told? How do you do it with your kids when you go to a monument or a place? Wait a second, there's a part B to this, or there's another aspect maybe we're not considering. How do you balance out history?
I think that it is important as Christians to seek for truth and even allow yourself to be uncomfortable in the truth that you seek. And I'll give you for instance for that. I went on a civil rights bus tour last summer, and we went to a graveyard of a Confederate graveyard. So most of these people in this graveyard have been a part of the Ku Klux Klan. That's what they were at least telling us. And I think it's important to be there, to step into that space, to know that history. I think the more that you can know, even of the truth, no matter how dark that truth is the closer you get to real freedom. I think in exploring and unearthing whatever truth there is and not masking that or not trying to dismiss it is very important in our pursuit of truth.
There's an argument that is a very prominent argument. So when we come up to this anniversary of America, it is not time to talk about those difficult moments. It is really time to celebrate the goodness. Can you celebrate goodness? This is almost like when you're at a funeral and you're thinking, well, you do not speak ill of the dead, or you don't, but you know that there's a grace story. There's another aspect of this life that needs to be examined. How can you do both? Can you love America big and at the same time have honest conversations about things that are buried in the graveyard?
Yeah, I think, to me, when I think about telling the story, I kind of agree with you, is that it depends on who's telling the story. Because, from my perspective, to tell a story, you have to exclude things. That's why some people are bad storytellers, because they tell you, what they ate for breakfast and which socks they put on and all of these things. And so, a good movie, a good book is no, look at this part, look at this part, look at this part in this order, and it'll hit this outcome. So I think there's almost maybe a disconnect between the idea of history and a story. Those two things we kind of say them in the same statement, but I always want to know, what is this? Is this a documentary, like a Ken Burns, type thing, or is this which isn't going to just on the surface.
Because he's making editorial decisions.
He's making editorial decisions, but I think the goal with something like that is to be more just factual, and there's a human involved, so it's always subjective.
Okay.
But versus am I watching a story that's meant to hit me emotionally, in which case you have to leave out things and change things.
Dr. LaGrand, one of the things that is often left out, because it is a deeply personal expression. I went to James Buchanan's home, Wheatland in Lancaster, and there is a faith journey that happened at the end of his life that is largely unexplored and was not part of the conversation when you visit Wheatland. But we brought that in. What is the role of the curators, the docents, the people that are at these sites? How much freedom should they have to bring in the rest of the story? Does everybody just bring their own life experience to the story they tell? Is that okay to have?
Hopefully that's not the case. I think there is an ethical, I would say as a Christian, a biblical and a Christian, but even more broadly than that, there's an ethical commitment to know your subjects. I'll give you an example. For a long time, it depends on where you look, but for a long time, there have been many treatments of, say, America's civil rights movement that treated religion, Christian impulses, all of this as kind of a grace note. And I would say one of the best books on the history of the civil rights movement by David Chappell, Stone of Hope. Interestingly, he's not a Christian, But he says you cannot understand the civil rights movement unless you understand it as a religious movement first, with political overtones. Many of these docents, I've heard some of them, they would say the opposite. Maybe because that's their lived experience, maybe because that's what people think we need now. But it's not helpful in any respect, even to understand what motivated, say, these leaders in the civil rights movement.
So that's interesting. Maybe as part of what you've explored as you've gone south is the fact that you're having these conversations in church buildings, but often people do not, the fact that somebody was a pastor, the fact that they were theologians, the fact that they were just ordinary Christians is often left out of the civil rights story, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, that was one of the most powerful, again, the civil rights bus tour that I went on. We went to the 16th Street Baptist Church, and I met survivors of that, horrendous bombing. And they were, very clear with us that the civil rights leaders, they were pastoring these people through this movement. And they were showing them that the injustices that are incurred in our country are a result of sin. And but sin has a savior. And this is what the savior looks like in public when we fight for human rights for everyone.
That is really fascinating. We were at the March for Life on Monday, and it's interesting when people don't connect that era of the civil rights movement with this era's civil rights movement to protect unborn or preborn life, it feels like a very fragmented story that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So, challenge to our viewers who are looking at history and saying, well, they don't teach this anymore, or they don't teach civics anymore, they don't teach, the state capitals anymore, whatever it is. What is your challenge to them, to frustrated parents and grandparents who want to see a better story told, but aren't afraid of the truth?
Yeah. Well, I think the reason people are mad is because they don't like who's telling the story right now. And that's fair enough. Some people don't like certain directors because they make a thing a tragedy or a comedy or too light or too dark or too whatever. So I think if you're frustrated, it's well, that might be the thing welling up in you. Saying maybe you need to also tell the story, but to your point, with real competency and understanding more sides of it. So if you're my kids aren't hearing the right story, maybe someone else isn't going to do it for you. You know?
Yeah, and there's a degree that technology allows us to now supplement the story that's missing. All right, final minute here, the eve of the 250th anniversary. You're going to experience international students that you teach at Messiah University, people visiting the country. What do you want them to know about America before they go back to Istanbul, to London, to wherever they came from?
I'll pick something in some ways quite broad, but I think so necessary, that civic piety is a broad thing. It's a big tent. It motivated people like Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was both one of the greatest critics of this country at a certain time, but the foundation of his criticism was the identity of America. There is, even in Frederick Douglass, even in his legendary What to the Slave is the 4th of July speech, the civic piety that he draws on in order to make this nation better. If we give up on, if civic piety declines past a certain level, I don't know what that level is, I don't know where movements for good come from.
What do you mean by civic piety? Give me the two-line definition there.
Civic piety is an understanding that there are wells of goodness, of positive motivation, of building coalitions towards the common good. That the nation is not, because the flip side of what we're talking about here, the flip side claims in some quarters that the nation is rotten. We know what that is, right?
But there's a bedrock of goodness.
When fruit is rotten, it doesn't turn back, right? I would say, not just based on how I view the present, but history, that's not the case.
The final word, and it's a good word. Gentlemen, thank you. This was very, very helpful. Well, empowering communities worldwide, how the tide is making sure every ear hears the life-saving message of the gospel. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Sharing the good news of Jesus Christ worldwide is the goal of the Tide. This nonprofit does this primarily through Christian media broadcasts in multiple languages. Joining me is Don Shenk, Executive Director of the Tide. Don, thanks for being with us. Remind us again about the Tide.
Thank you, Debra. Yeah, the Tide is a global media-based mission organization that is focused on sharing the gospel with people around the world in their own language. And we work with indigenous partners to do that, so that we're using an indigenous voice, somebody sharing the gospel with their own people in their own language, and focus on regions of the world where there's limited access to the gospel. And of course, we also follow that up with discipleship and church planting.
And you certainly are wide-reaching.
Yes, we have the ministry partnerships in 14 different countries now, with either radio or TV broadcasts in 34 different languages.
That is amazing. You recently celebrated a pretty big anniversary. Talk to us about that.
Yes, we are celebrating our 79th anniversary. And in 1946, on August 11th, it was a Sunday morning. It was the first day the radio station opened in Chambersburg. Reverend Charlie Byers was there to preach the gospel live. And over the years, that grew regionally. But when Transworld Radio opened up and began to broadcast overseas, through some connections and mutual people that they knew, Charlie was invited to put that on the air. And that started the transition of adding different languages and having the program produced in other countries. And so here we are 79 years later, from one seed that was planted, having a global outreach ministry.
And how do you see that this ministry is making a difference?
The biggest difference we see is in the lives that are being changed, people getting hope. And with each of our media partners in those 14 countries, we ask for quarterly reports, to record how many people are responding. And for example, over the last 3 months, we had over 6,000 people in India respond to the gospel. So we get translated portions of stories, of their testimonies. So we are seeing people are finding hope in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And your organization takes a lot of volunteers. You do have a specific program. Tell us about that.
We do. We have a program, we call it the Tide Ambassador Program, where we recruit or we invite people from churches or other organizations to be our representative for that group. So they play a very important role in helping to share information when we have fundraising events, when we have different outreaches, getting news out, giving us feedback from them. And also another very important role they play is in helping to mobilize prayer from those groups. Our global ministry partners so much appreciate prayer support. And so our ambassadors are that link. And they help they're an important part of that whole volunteer, and the global outreach depends so much on them.
Yeah, prayer certainly makes a huge difference. Now, we know you have a fundraiser currently going on with Abednego Coffee Shop, but tell us about the golf tournament that's coming up.
We do 2 golf tournaments each year, one in Chambersburg and one in the Mechanicsburg area. And those, again, that's a way for people to engage in an activity that they enjoy while helping to raise funds. And the majority of the funds that we raise through those come from sponsorships. So we have different individuals, but mostly companies, who sponsor to get their name out there on the signs, but they're helping to share the gospel. And the purpose is just to get the gospel out. And so we're looking, I think we still have some spaces left, but we aim to sell out every year.
And certainly it does make a difference.
Yes.
How can we pray for the Tide and the volunteers?
Just pray for the open doors, for, if we're looking at the volunteers specifically, for a boldness to be willing to share, and many of them do. They're very active and engaging. But pray for success in them helping to raise awareness, because the more people we get involved, the more we can do for God's kingdom around the world.
That is right. And prayer is an amazing thing,
Right,
and it can really move mountains.
Absolutely.
Don, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Coming up next on Morning Light, the Tide is teaming up with a coffee company in central Pennsylvania. Next, we will share how you can grab a cup of joe and help the Tide. How was it being here at the concert?
It was incredible. The friends that showed up for this were almost as excited about being here as I was. This is such a fun, exciting tour for me to get to give to people who listen to my music and come to my concerts for so many years. And I feel like it's a gift just to get to play this album in as close to the form of what it sounds like when you listen to the record. I've got the strings and I've got the full band. Everything about it, it's been so fun for me I feel like I'm getting to give this gift to people who've listened to my music and have journeyed with me, and you can just see it in their faces, the tears, the laughter, the smiles, the singing along. Yeah, it was so special, very special.
We just heard how the Tide is trying to spread the gospel in multiple languages around the world. The Central Pennsylvania Coffee Company is trying to help in that mission. Joining me is Emilio Garcia with Abednego Coffee Roasters. Emilio, thanks for being with us. Talk to us about Abednego Coffee Roasters.
Abednego Coffee Roaster, I started in 2008. The founder is Jeff Myers with his wife. And I met Jeff in 2013 when I started bringing my coffee from my farm in Honduras to sell coffee to roasters. And I find him and we became good friends. And later on, he teach me how to roast coffee. And long short story, he told me, now you run it. So I keep running Abednego Coffee.
Wow, that is wonderful. And you are actively involved with the Tide. We see the name, the Tide, here on your coffee. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we come partner with Tide, and like 4 years ago, it's Mark Story. We used to work with Tide, and he approached me and talk about the fundraiser. And then it's where we start partner with Tide with the fundraisers that they do every year.
Talk to us about your faith journey.
Yeah, well, I'm from Honduras, and Catholic is the church in Honduras. And we always, try to help the communities. And when I came to the United States and met Jeff and see what he was doing with Abednego Coffee, I really liked the purpose that he created Abednego. Was like as a ministry. So in the sale of our coffee, portion of that coffee go back to the communities where the coffee is produced. Besides help other organizations here in the United States, we keep doing it, and hopefully we can encourage another churches, another organization that has fundraisers that we can work with them too.
And how are you helping the people in Honduras?
We do programs like lunch programs, we call, in the schools or up in the mountains, because the governments over there, they give help to the schools, to the meals, but not enough. And the kids don't go to school. Mm-hmm. And giving a lunch to the kids is one of the purpose, to bring kids to the school and they can learn. And we work with the leaders in the community too, like pastors, that they can help us, to spread the gospel with the kids.
Yeah, how do you think you are spreading the gospel with your coffee company?
One is, we help in the communities, we produce the coffee, but we help here too, making partnership with churches and the Tide. That's what I think we can help, give a little bit of our mission too.
And what type of reaction do you receive?
People like it. People love it. Some people don't know Abednego, but when you explain them, they like it and they like the coffee. So that is I think that's a good purpose.
Emilio, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
To learn more about the Tide or to purchase Abednego Coffee, check out thetide.org. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. It is believed to be the world's fastest-growing criminal enterprise. Learn what Zoe International is doing to protect the vulnerable. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Thank you, Debra. Well, in 1857, an economic panic swept the country, a downturn leading to the collapse of thousands of businesses, tens of thousands of job losses. The banks failed, and a feeling of deep insecurity swept the nation. In response, a man named Jeremiah Lanphier organized a noon prayer meeting at a church in New York City. 6 people, that's it, turned up that very first day. But soon, hundreds of businessmen joined during their 12 to 1 lunch hour. And then it spread, first to Philadelphia, then to Pittsburgh, then to Boston and Chicago, and then to cities all across the country. Something history now records as the businessmen's revival. At Janes Hall in Philadelphia, 3,000 to 4,000 joined every day for the prayer meeting. One newspaper in New York reported with some astonishment that the Baptists and the Presbyterians were singing the same chorus and bowing down at the same altar. There were no denominational distinctions. They were just seeking God's will for their cities, for their families, for their states, for their businesses. And day after day, the world watched fear give way to faith, anxiety turn to trust, and for well over 2 years, American cities turned to God. Now, if you listen and you look carefully, there's some evidence it may just be happening again in 2025. Imagine what God can do with an hour, a single hour, dedicated to prayer, dedicating to seeking God's will for your family, for your life, for your community. If it could happen then, it can happen today by God's grace. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for spending this part of your day with us. Now go check on your neighbors, and then the plan is we'll meet back here, God willing, tomorrow morning.